PlayStation has lost its mind. I'm sorry, did you just really notice this now? Because it has been staring me in the face for a couple of years now, and I'm sure most other people have also noticed this slight, gigantic problem happening. And I think it has been extremely exacerbated in the last year, honestly.
It's been a busy start to the year. And so PlayStation has been really pursuing this live service initiative with real aggression. And they've done so in a manner that I would use the term uneducated.
Concord, remember, this was supposed to overthrow Call of Duty. This was supposed to be the real GTA 6. This was supposed to dawn in a new era of dominance, said a lot of people who are insane and should be in asylums.
I think it's totally understandable when you look at industry trends, the amount of money that gets poured into this genre and how much you can get out of it, that big companies are going to chase the live service bag. I've kind of just come and accepted that. But there's a way to do it, and PlayStation has shown as much with something like Helldivers 2, and there's a way to not do it. PlayStation has shown as much with something like Concord. Well, that...
I'm sorry, but PlayStation tried to ruin Helldivers as much as humanly possible. If they had their way and it wasn't for massive community outcry and everyone getting mad at them, Helldivers would already be dead. No joke, Helldivers would literally already be dead months ago if PlayStation actually had its way.
Live service push has continued, and it's led to 2 canceled games. And while I'm not upset about the canceled games in particular, one especially, I'm like, who thought this was a good idea? It's really the talent that's working on it. And as these development cycles get
Talent, he says. Yes, I'm sure they're talented.
longer, the colossal amount of time being just wasted, the resources, if you will, being wasted is staggering, as we'll break down here. We're going to get into an article from Bloomberg on what exactly happened with these 2 canceled projects at PlayStation. Then we're going to move over to an interview with Shuhei Yoshida, which was with Kind of Funny. And it's there he speaks a lot about basically the old guard, your Andrew Houses, your Sean Layden's, your Shuhei Yoshidas, you know, during that PS3, 4 generation.
I'm pretty sure you pronounced that Yoshida, but okay.
Really a golden era for many of us when it comes to PlayStation, and how things are very different now, and why that may be the case and what he would have done differently. But the big question that'll be on the tip of many people's tongues is why a company like Bluepoint, who's known for fantastic remakes, wasn't making things like Bloodborne maybe, or I don't know.
Never heard of Bluepoint, but okay.
Something else within the PlayStation family. There's a lot of questions, and we got some answers here. But if you're new here and you're into what's going on across video games, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. I wanted to stop the video for a second because I imagine you're sitting there thinking, huh, this video really needs a sponsor.
No.
So I've got you covered. All right, Pete.
No.
Channel and sponsoring today's video. So let's start off with Bloomberg, where their report comes in saying Sony cancels 2 more PlayStation projects in broader retreat. Sony has canceled previously unannounced games at 2 of its top subsidiaries, the company said Thursday. The games are at Oregon-based Bend Studio and Texas-based Bluepoint Games, were both live service projects designed to draw recurring revenue from players. Neither studio will be shuttered. Quote, Bend and Bluepoint are highly accomplished teams who are valued members of the PlayStation Studios family, and we are working closely with each studio to determine what are the next projects, end quote, the spokesperson.
By the way, this is absolutely huge, because projects don't tend to be canceled midway unless something really bad happens, and that bad is obviously Concord. The Concord tax is, by the way, not a meme. Okay, it is kind of a meme that the new PlayStation 5 Pro or whatever is going to be like 300 euros more expensive than what was previously, and you get no benefit out of it. But hey, if you're a console pleb, I mean, go take out a loan or something. I don't give a shit. But yeah, the Concord tax is real, and this is actually what it is. Because if these are live service things, they are... after Concord got shuttered, because again, I'm not joking, PlayStation and the Concord devs legitimately thought that they have the next GTA 6 on their hands on how much groundbreaking records and money Concord will be making. And yeah, 700 peak players, that's 10 out of 10. And well, after that, they obviously understood, wait a minute, we have no idea what's good or bad. We're clueless. So they canceled everything because if they're 120% cash cow big ticket thing that everyone was considered that's going to be making huge waves busts this hard, then what does that tell you about everything else that they are doing? Yeah, exactly. That's probably in even a worse state than they anticipated.
Person said. For Sony, the strategy has led to one hit in 2024's Helldivers 2, as I talked about, and several flops, including Concord, which was removed from sale less than 2 weeks after it was released. The company has also canceled several other live service games over the last few years, including one based on Spider-Man, Bloomberg has reported. Sony didn't say if the cancellations will lead.
Spider-Man based game cancellation makes sense because Spider-Man 2 completely fucking failed. Well, it didn't completely fail, but it showed that Spider-Man, at the bare minimum, has like an upper level that they can kind of attain without being groundbreaking. And that upper level is completely financially unviable. Because Spider-Man 2 sold pretty decently, but it barely recuperated its money. I'm not sure if it actually has made a profit at this point. But, you know, it's kind of milling around the point of making actual profits. But they're looking at the margins and saying, well, this is not gonna work. This is not good. Also, it didn't help the fact that Spider-Man 2 had Sweet Baby Inc. Incorporated in their designs and all of that stuff, which people hated. I mean, go have a date with your autistic, deaf girlfriend and hear no sound like you're underwater or some shit like that. Yeah, I'm sure players want that in their Spider-Man games. I'm so sure, in fact.
Lead to job cuts. In a memo to staff reviewed by Bloomberg, the company said it's, quote, working closely with Bend and Bluepoint to determine what are the next projects and plan to do everything we can to ensure there is minimal business impact. So the funny thing about all of this is it then came out what exactly Bluepoint in particular was working.
Bro, Manny, whoever is picking your background music should visit the seventh circle of hell because my god, this is painful.
And if you have not heard this news, I'm just gonna brace you a little bit. It is one of the most on paper unappealing sounding projects I have ever heard of. All right, ready? It was a God of War live service game.
I don't understand this, honestly. Okay, I don't understand people who are just gonna instantaneously call any live service bad. The reality is, most of the games you probably like the most are live services. World of Warcraft Classic, live service. World of Warcraft Retail, God forbid if you're born, live service. Helldivers 2, live service, okay? Almost all the good games are honestly live services. So, a God of War live service sounds strange, but that does not sound like, oh, this is gonna be horrible instantaneously. No, it purely depends on what they do with it, okay? In which direction they take it, how it looks and whatnot. Sure, they're trying to, take advantage of the IP name God of War and whatnot, and probably God of War has gonna not be nothing to do with the actual live service game itself, but still, that can be an easy success. Most things that are huge successes in gaming and everything in general are things that no one literally asked for. Marvel Rivals is currently probably the biggest thing, and guess what? No one asked for this! Before I heard people constantly yelling, hero shooters are dead. And there you go, Marvel Rivals comes out and bam! Most popular thing ever. Also, yeah, that's a good pause.
Have you lost your damn mind? What? To think about God of War and where it started, right? And the one time PlayStation, dipped out of the way a little bit to something less traditional with God of War, which was the very under-discussed PS3 title, God of War Ascension, which I remember playing and not being like hateful of it during the campaign, but the whole multiplayer aspect of God of War Ascension was really weird. And just, yeah, these two don't go together. And that was the game that almost killed Sony Santa Monica, and so they went back to the drawing board. They put together the Kratos boy we know today, and you got two excellent video games.
Ah, yes, Kratos, the cuck that, bends to the will of women and has to take care of probably not even his kid. Let's be completely real, okay? And if it's his kid, he's gay and probably trans at this point. Okay, now, this is not the God of War Kratos, okay? This is nothing. This is not bathed in the ashes of his fucking family, Kratos. No. This is, oh, please, how can I get more cucked, Kratos?
Games from that team. I don't know where live service really comes to mind with God of War.
Look at that. He literally has another man's head slapping against his cheek constantly.
Or I can't even imagine a video game quite like that. I guess like co-op looter. It just sounds so against every piece of the IP's DNA. And I'm not even like a diehard God of War fan, but it's ridiculous that this was ever greenlit. And what's more ridiculous is the waste of Bluepoint's time, right? Bluepoint is a fantastic remake studio. We've seen them do great work for something like Shadow of the Colossus. We've also seen them do at the launch of the PS5, which was really the last time we truly saw them in a proper full-scale release, with Demon's Souls remake. So this company's proven itself to do something that is actually extremely valuable to the video game business right now. We're in that remake remaster era. They do it really well. They do it reliably so. And in many places, they're making kind of the definitive version of these games where, like, honestly, From Software has been very open about the pressure they faced when they saw Demon's Souls remake because of the upgrade in graphics and frame rate. Like, they felt pressure leading into Elden Ring that they weren't too crazy about. So my question is, when you have a remake studio that's really good in an era where people just want to buy the same thing that they played like 20 years ago, why weren't they remake? Hell,
am I the only one who doesn't really want to buy the same thing from 20 years ago? I'm fine with the old games, but I don't want to buy them again. I don't know about you.
Why weren't they just remaking an old God of War? If they're making a God of War game, they have the God of War assets, why aren't they just remaking God of War 1? Like,
probably because they said that this is problematic. Because they did, by the way, say that this is obviously problematic.
Just going back to the very beginning of it all. If that's really what they had to do, like it's a remake studio and you're handing them God of War, I guess that's where you go with it. Maybe. I just think it's a colossal waste of their time because you see how long we haven't really seen them for truly. And again, a full-scale release that's like their baby. It's been a while. And now they get set behind a ton where it's going to be years before we see them again because they got to spin something else up. Now, to be fair, AAA companies typically have multiple games in production, so I don't know if they're starting something truly from scratch, but this feels like such a waste. And when you look at Bend, poor Bend, man, I'm surprised they're hanging around because this has been since Days Gone. We haven't seen them, and it is like,
what are they supposed to do? It's like Sony's their boss. I mean, what do you want them exactly to do?
A completely different team at this point. They haven't been able to get anything out, and so to see them lose another project, I'm like, gosh, it's crazy to see how long it's been for them as well. And these are two very talented studios. Like, I'm not the biggest Days Gone fan, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, but still, people really like that game. Like, these are two talented teams that are just having their time and their talent wasted. The amount of people who might just straight up choose to, if they have the ability to, the luxury to, exit the studio to go and find another job elsewhere, maybe a position's on the table elsewhere, will probably be taken up because the time here that's being wasted is insane. These development cycles just don't seem to be getting shorter, which is something that the ex-head of PlayStation, Sean Layden, has argued against many times, saying these games are getting way too big, way too expensive. They need to get smaller. And so, it's going to be another like half a decade before we hear from either of these teams potentially in a meaningful way. And again, I'm glad that studios aren't getting shuttered, at least according to the initial report. I hope that remains true. And so after that, this interesting interview came out between Shuhei Yoshida.
Is this the really good zombie game, or is this the really, really, really bad? I can't tell.
And kind of funny. And Shuhei said that he would have resisted the push towards live service video games. And the quotes here are very interesting.
Wow.
He says, "For me, I was managing this budget, so I was responsible for allocating money to what kind of games to make, said Yoshida. If the company was considering going that way, it probably didn't make sense to stop making another God of War or single-player game and put all the money into the live service games. However, what they did when I left and Herman Hulst took over is the company gave us a lot more resources. I don't think they told Herman to stop making single-player games. They said, these games are great, keep doing that, and we'll give you additional resources to work on these live service games and try it. He added, I'm sure
that does sound reasonable, because one giant misconception that a lot of people fucking have for some reason is the idea that these companies are gonna stop doing what makes money. Okay, if you have God of War and the single player games are making money, you keep doing that. You keep making God of War single player games, and then if someone buys you and they're bigger, they give you money to make more stuff potentially, or get a studio to do this, do a spin-off of a live service game or something. That's what they do. They're not gonna typically choose to cancel something that is already making money. That's not how these things work. I have said this many times. There is no such a thing as an IP that is successful, makes money, that's just not gonna get a sequel. Okay. Every successful IP is going to get a sequel until the point that the last drop of blood has been squeezed from the stone. That's it. And then even they're going to try one last time to revitalize it. And after that, they're going to try 5 years later to revitalize it.
They knew it was risky, the chance of a game becoming successful in this hugely competitive genre would be small. However, the company, knowing that risk, gave Herman the resources and a chance to try it. I think that's the way they did it. In my mind, that's great, and hopefully some games will become successful. Luckily, Helldivers 2 did so well, and nobody expected that. So you can't really plan a success in this industry. That's the most fun part of this business. I hope that this strategy will work in the end. If I was in Herman's position, probably I would have tried to resist that direction. Maybe that's what.
By the way, do you notice the two obvious things that are clashing against each other here? It's the fact that it's a really saturated market and success is hard, but then something that no one expects succeeding does succeed, like Helldivers 2. These ideas kind of should be mutually exclusive, but they're not for some reason. And that is obviously because of the fact that these people completely ignored the concept of, yeah, if you make a good game, it's gonna sell. It doesn't matter in which genre they're. If you make a good enough game, people will buy it.
One of the reasons they removed me from first party, which he did say jokingly. We'll talk about that in a moment. He wanted to explain his decision to leave PlayStation after over 30 years with the company. He said, on one hand, I was enjoying what I was doing. We had so many great times within the organization and so many great games and IPs to work on. I totally enjoyed working on the first party development, and in my mind, I didn't have any interest to work elsewhere in the company other than the game development after so many years. But when they offered me this idea to do something on indies, at that time, the company was criticized for not supporting indies enough. At the launch of PS4, in the former executive Adam Boy's days, we were promoting indies so well, the industry loved it. I loved what Adam's team was doing. I was very worried about that trend as well and how we're being seen. So when Jim Ryan, the former PlayStation CEO, said, "Shu, we've been criticized, we're not doing enough for indies," I said, yeah, you should do something about it. And Jim said, no, I want you to do something about it. He added, I thought it was something I cared about, and I thought I could uniquely do something about it. After 11 years managing worldwide studios, even though I enjoyed it and was proud of what we accomplished, leading the group with the same person for such a long time might not be a great thing. Like talking about live service games, people who have one way of thinking and looking at games, some things I'm not interested in and wouldn't even try. Like I was totally not interested in movies being made based on our game IP. The film industry looked down on us and they didn't respect the creative aspect of video games. And they made very bad movies when they tried. So I had no interest, but after I left, look at all these great movies and TV shows.
Video game movie early adaptations, the word tries lifting literally bridges and skyscrapers at this point, okay? The weight of the moon is on the word try's shoulders here, because my god, no, Hollywood detested the idea that they would be subservient to games and these movies would be successful, because the Hollywood cannot stomach the idea that anything other than their visions can be successful in the first place for movies and TV series. So the idea that gaming can be a successful movie or whatever, that is just blasphemy. They did not believe in it, and that's why they wanted to change everything. That's why the early comic book hero adaptations, game adaptations for movies have been so tremendously bad, and they still keep being bad for the majority of times.
Shows being made. So this is a loaded answer, right? There is a lot to what Shuhei Yoshida is saying. And again, for those who were like really in on the PS4, Vita, PS3, like this dude's an icon, like a true gaming legend. So his words are one that you should listen to very closely. I am not trying to stoke the fire.
Days Gone, I think, was the good zombie game, but there was one really, really bad one also.
But I can't help but read
on motorcycles
this and think to myself that there is a level of like, hey, Herman did that or Jim did that, but I wouldn't have done that. You know, not really pointing the finger in an antagonistic or a sort of bitter way, but saying that this direction does not really lie with him. And I find it interesting that when you spend 30 years with a company that you do suddenly go, hey man, sometimes you just don't give things chances. And like, it was kind of time for the old guard to step down. It sounds like to me the push was for live service. Shuhei really wasn't into that sort of push, as he's clearly illustrated here. As the person who was allocating the budget at the top studios, he got moved to the indie program to kind of get him out of the way.
I think when he got replaced, it was at the time where live services were catching really, really on as passive money makers. Again, this is not a meme. A line must go up, but the line going up like this is bad, because it's going to drop down like that also at some point. So, live services are effectively the easiest, cheap ways. Well, they're not really cheap, but who honestly cares about expenses when you're the CEO of these companies, right? As long as the line goes like up, like you know, you're 2, 3, 4, 5, if you're really cool, percent, you're having a good time. You're getting your bonuses. You're getting all the praises. Your work safety is super safe. Everyone's happy. But live services suck, so this doesn't happen. But they want this because it is so better to make a live service game that just trickles in a little bit of that money and line slowly goes up, not making an actually good game. Like, I constantly use this example. Warner Brothers, the gaming division. Hogwarts Legacy selling so well probably made people be like, oh no, my bonus for next year is dead. We're never gonna achieve numbers like this again. What do we do? My bonus for next year is not happening. And the CEO was, my bonus is also not happening. Yeah, everyone was pissed, obviously, because now they need to make a Hogwarts Legacy 2 that sells exactly as much, or some magically how convince the fucking investors and everyone else that their next year's budgets should, for some reason, ignore this money right here and just pretend it never happened, and, you know, the line actually goes like this. That's not happening. That is not happening most of the time.
Because he likely did resist that part of the process. Like, why are we going to spend this much on a God of War live service game when we have a God of War game that is proven here and selling? And that is what kind of led to this moment here where we're seeing all of this live service push throughout the PS5 generation. Remember, the original story was that PlayStation was going after like 10 plus live service games by 2026. And all of them except Helldivers 2 have been a spectacular failure. Think about that. They've either been canceled or, in the case of Concord, is the worst failure in video game history as far as I'm concerned. To have a studio release a game, it get delisted.
Dustborn was technically worse. It had 70 players and it was like 100 million. No, it wasn't 100 million. How much was it? But it was a lot still.
Less than 2 weeks later, a studio apology comes out and then the team gets shut down. Like, I don't mean to laugh, but That is the worst of worst case scenarios, especially for the amount of money that PlayStation is spending on this. You know, when you look at a company like, say, Microsoft, they have so much money that it is embarrassing that they fail at times, right? Because it's like you could spend your way out of so many problems that you seem to have, but also the amount of money they have leads to being a problem because they think they can just buy talent. PlayStation, in a lot of ways, has nurtured the talent. The problem is now is that PlayStation doesn't have that level of capital with Sony as their head. They don't have that level of capital like a Microsoft where they can just throw money everywhere. They have to be more
I mean, how bad was Concord?
calculated.
Look at this. This character's ability is to set things on fire with her mind because reasons. But instead she uses a fucking slingshot like a child because more reasons. Yep, that's how bad Concord was. Well, anyway, that's 10 out of 10. That was Mr. Manny Plays. Bye-bye.